Hi, I'm Daniel Patton, and I will be presenting the geology of Arches National Park. Arches National Park is located within the Paradox Basin in Utah, roughly 5 miles north of the city of Moab and situated along the Colorado River. In 1929, President Hoover signed a presidential proclamation establishing Arches National Monument. Later, in 1971, President Nixon approved Public Law 92-155, which would recognize the surrounding area as a national park. The park is notable for its several large natural sandstone arches. Right here you can see the extent of the Paradox Basin, this black line, and you can see Arches National Park right here within that boundary. During the late Paleozoic era, faulting and subsidence created the Paradox Basin west of the ancestral Rocky Mountains. Over the next 15 million years, the region experienced alternating periods of deep ocean water and very shallow water, which deposited salt sediments as the water evaporated. By the late Pennsylvanian period, these sediments had formed a massive salt anticline that began to be dissolved by groundwater. These conditions later made it possible for the park's characteristic sandstone arches to form. Right here you can actually see one of these periods where the Paradox Basin was filled with shallow ocean water. And it would alternate between this and deeper water, and occasionally there would be periods where there was relatively no water at all. The red dot right here is the location of the park. As the salt formation dissolved, the rock and sediment layers above it subsided, leaving large sandstone fins separated by cracks that had formed in the subsidence process. These fins were then weathered and eroded away until they resembled the arches that are present in the park today. The park stands at a relatively high elevation, ranging between around 4,000 feet to around 5,600 feet above sea level at its highest point at Elephant Butte. The park is generally characterized by broad sandy flats and dunes, broken up by steep canyons where streams have cut downward into the rock. These canyons are often several hundred feet deep. Also present are several massive raised terrain features like that of Elephant Butte or the Tower of Babel formations. These often, though not always, feature arches. They are mainly formed of entrada sandstones, though the tallest formations are sometimes capped by Morrison Formation mudstones. The northern section of the park also contains a large valley which sits on the crest of the Paradox Salt Anticline. This valley is called Salt Valley. The area ranges in elevation from between 4,400 feet to 4,800 feet above sea level and features several smaller streams that eventually rejoin the nearby Colorado River. Due to the presence of large salt beds, the area has been subjected to tectonic activity by both salt movement and salt dissolution. So salt dissolution was what caused the area to be depressed earlier, but also formed an anticline that would like poke near the surface of the basin. Which I'll get into later. The older rock around the park has been folded into anticlines and synclines by upward salt movement. This can be observed as an angular unconformity between rock strata as displayed by the Chinle Formation, which formed during the Upper Triassic during 230 to 210 million years ago. Right here, this image shows the unconformity here. Here's the Chinle Formation right here, and this is made up of various sandstone layers and limestone layers. That's actually the white parts of the stone that you see there. And right above that is the Wingate Sandstone Formation, which is very flat, horizontal in comparison to this formation right here. The red Entrada sandstone that composes most of the park's arches was formed during the Middle Jurassic period, between 180 to 140 million years ago. Later uplift accelerated erosion that removed most of the layers above, but remnants of them can still be seen in some parts of the park. Like I had said earlier, that would be areas like on Elephant Butte near the top. You can see the Morrison Formation mudstones. Right here is a diagram of the rock strata in the area. The Entrada sandstone makes up this section right here, and most of what you would see in Arches National Park is like the arches are mostly formed out of the Moab member and the Slick Rock member. Delicate Arch is an example of this. You can see a boundary between the Moab member and Slick Rock member in the middle of that arch. It's pretty neat. Actually, that was the first. No, not the first slide. This slide right here. Right here is the boundary. Okay. Water bodies. The park is bounded along its southern edge by the Colorado River. All surface water in the park eventually re-enters the Colorado River, either directly through minor drainage drainage channels, or indirectly via salt wash or courthouse wash. The Colorado River in the area is categorized by the EPA as impaired in its use for swimming and boating, as well as aquatic life due to the presence of bacteria and toxic metals. The metals likely enter the waterway further upstream, as both the upstream and downstream sections of the river are also similarly impaired. However, only the section near the park is affected by bacteria. This means that it's not entering from upstream; it's entering from around the same area as the park. So this could mean that one of the nearby towns, potentially Castle Valley, which is just upstream of the park, that could be the source of the contamination. It could be improper upkeep of septic tanks in the area. They don't provide like a sewer system there, so residents have to maintain their own septic tanks, and any issues with those could be putting bacteria into the Colorado River. Downstream, actually, the bacteria level is not like a problem downstream of the park. It's just like in that section of the river that's like right next to the park is where the impairment is happening. Okay, salt wash. Most of the minor water bodies along the north and east of the park drain into salt wash. The water runs along the length of Salt Valley before turning south toward the Colorado River. The EPA labels salt wash water as unsuitable for agricultural or industrial use due to a high concentration of dissolved salts. The likely source of these is the salt bed present in the near the surface in Salt Valley. Courthouse Wash flows along the southwest edge of the park, and also, like Salt Wash, its water is listed as impaired for agricultural and industrial use due to high salinity. It is also considered by the EPA to be impaired for aquatic life because of high water temperatures. It's possible that this is due to a loss of plant life that would provide shade and reduce the temperature of surface water. There's actually a study that shows that that native flora, shading flora in that area is being suppressed by invasive species, and I will touch on that later. From April through July, due to a combination of snowmelt and increased rainfall as monsoon season begins, the park's water bodies experience greatly increased discharge rates. During these months, the Colorado River just downstream of the park discharges anywhere between 5 to 10 times as much water per second as it does during the rest of the year. And here's a graph of that discharge. Here you can see the discharge rate through around April. The middle of April is about when this begins to ramp up very quickly. You can see this like little spike right here, and that I believe is the is part of the snowmelt that is entering the river, and then right here would be the beginning of the rainy season. And it's worth noting that this is not a linear y-axis. This is actually increasing at a non-linear rate. So if these were at regular intervals, this would be like way higher. The park also experiences relatively high rates of erosion. Aeolian, hydraulic, and chemical erosion occur all along the park's cliffs, dunes, stream beds, and groundwater channels, displacing large volumes of salt and sediments, often depositing them into nearby water bodies or along those drainage channels. And you can actually see salt that has been deposited on the surface of Courthouse Wash and Salt Wash by moving groundwater. It's got very high salinity, like I talked about in the last slide, and that salt will be deposited as the water evaporates during periods where it's not quite so wet, at least. They will evaporate and leave salt on the surface of those stream beds, and you can see it. Rapid water change during the summer months can lead to flash flooding as water fills the park's flat, shallow stream beds. Flash floods can move a large volume of sediment as they travel, and this can destabilize the surrounding area. Even after floodwater recedes, the presence of soluble salt beds in the area means that water that permeates into the ground could cause subsurface chemical erosion as it dissolves the salt that's supporting some of the ground, and that could damage surface integrity. Landslides, ground faulting and collapse, and sinkhole formation are all possible side effects of flash flooding. Arches National Park also features Numerous slopes covered with transient, potentially unstable material, particularly along those drainage channels and stream beds. Uh, if a triggering factor is introduced, this material is likely to accumulate into a landslide, or at least cause minor, or not minor, but small scale mass wasting. Uh, Sediments deposited along streambed slopes due to erosion are common pre-landslide material. If one of these slopes were to collapse in a landslide, the deposition of material into the stream bed could raise the bottom of the channel. It could even alter the drainage path, potentially increasing the likelihood and severity of flash flooding in the area. So these are independent events that actually both can contribute to worsening the effects of the other. Some mitigation for flash flooding. The park already has several artificial drainage systems designed to keep floodwater from interfering with roads and bridges. They often become blocked, though, due to the large amount of sediment entering the channels. The invasive tamarisk plant also grows in these sediment deposits, further impeding drainage flow. Committing to active drain channel management along these systems can help prevent them from becoming blocked. Regular sediment monitoring and excavation may be needed to properly address the issue. Also, reintroducing suppressed native flora could help reduce soil erosion and tamarisk growth in vulnerable areas. Adaptive trail management can help park authorities keep visitors safe as the park landscape changes due to movement of sediments. By managing the paths of the trails that guide them around the park. Labeling at-risk areas with proper signage could help minimize injuries or fatalities and help prevent human-triggered mass wasting events. This also requires geotechnical assessment and active monitoring of streams and slopes in the park. Also, judicious implementation of replanting programs could also help stabilize topsoil and reduce the volume of displaced sediments in case of future landslides. And by replanting events, I mean in removal of invasive species and replanting native species. However, it is also worth noting that too much ground flora cover could actually increase the risk of wildfire in dry months, and this can worsen the effects of flash flooding and erosion. The nature of Arches National Park is, in a way, ephemeral. Its natural arches are constantly weathered and eroded, and new ones are forming. The landscape almost seems determined never to stop changing. When campers that had visited Wall Arch on August 4th, 2008, awoke that night to the sound of its collapse, it must have come as a shock to see how a structure that took hundreds of millions of years to form can also be transformed seemingly instantaneously. The park's natural processes are constant and gradual, but we can still see some regular rapid change occur at a human timescale. For example, along Courthouse Wash, seasonal floodwaters deposit enough sediment to raise the stream bed by about 0.21 meters per year on average, and that was based on a study from 2013 to 2015. But humans can also change the park just as quickly as the park changes itself. In the same area, visitors traveling along the side of the drainage, drainage channels have contributed to significant gully formation, which can further amplify the amount of erosion that takes place during the wetter months. Arches National Park unfolds as a geological spectacle shaped by millennia of intricate processes, from the formation of iconic sandstone arches to the ever-shifting dynamics of erosion. While the park's varied landscape tells a silent tale of ancient forces, it also faces contemporary challenges, such as water quality concerns along the Colorado River and the threat of flash floods. Balancing human impact requires a commitment to active conservation, both in current issues and in those that may arise in the future. As stewards of this environment, we must embrace adaptive strategies to ensure the park's longevity as a living testament to geological change.